Hey guys, this is my first video for the month of May 2019, and since I'm in a little bit of a time crunch at the moment as I'm filming this video, truth is I'm getting ready to go to work in about a half an hour's time as of the filming of this video right now. I thought I'd sit down and do a quick video here before I go to work tonight. It is Wednesday, May the 8th, 2019, and there is something that I wanted to talk about in additional detail, or in further detail, regarding my thoughts on the National Hockey League's current playoff format. So this is my thoughts on the NHL's current playoff format, part 2. So this is kind of, I'm sure, a bit of a surprise video for you guys, and it's actually a bit of a surprise video for myself too. But I thought about it yesterday, and there's something else that I wanted to talk about, and it's regarding how the second round of the playoffs work. Now, before I get into that, I want to say a couple things. Number one, this video will definitely not be quite as long as the last video that I did when I shared my thoughts on the current playoff format. And if you did not watch that video, if you've got a half an hour to kill, or you want to hear me talk for half an hour about it, you're more than welcome to check that video out. But I will quickly summarize it here for anybody who just wants to watch this video only. And if you do, that's totally fine. I totally understand. But what I said in that video is that I think the current format is okay the way it is. I mean, I think it works, and the reason I say that is because at the end of the day, the best team will win the Stanley Cup, in theory. However, in my opinion, I would strongly prefer that the NHL goes back to the old format before the new conferences, or the new divisional alignments were created. So instead of having the top 3 teams being division winners, you would only have the top 2 teams in each conference as the division winners, because there's now only 4 divisions instead of 6. And what I would prefer is that system, because that way a team's playoff opponent is determined on their ranking in the conference overall, not based on how you finish in your division. And for me, I don't like the divisional format, because you've got matchups like, say, Nashville and Dallas in the first round, where if it was in the old format, Nashville would have finished in second in the conference, and they would have played the Vegas Golden Knights because they finished in 7th. And if you're a Golden Knights fan, you know what? In my opinion, I actually would not be surprised if your team would still be in the playoffs if they played Nashville instead of San Jose. And for you Predators fans out there who may be watching this video, guess what? There's also a chance that maybe your team is still in the playoffs. I mean, they lost fair and square, and to you Stars fans out there, I'm not saying this to take anything away from your team winning. In fact, I mean, your team got to Game 7 against the St. Louis Blues in the second round last night, for Christ's sake. I mean, the Dallas Stars really did a great job. I wasn't even expecting them to get out of the first round, and they almost knocked out the St. Louis Blues. They pushed them to Game 7. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, at one point, I didn't even know if the Stars would even make the playoffs this year, for Christ's sake. So the fact that they almost got to the conference final, that's pretty damn impressive. But what I'm trying to say is that some of the first round matchups would have been different. Boston would have played Pittsburgh, and Toronto would have played the Islanders. And you know what? I mean, it's possible that we could have the same result, but what if we didn't? I mean, if you look at the conference and how the conference standings were, I mean, Boston would have finished in 3rd, and they would have played 6th place Pittsburgh instead of 5th place Toronto. And Boston won that series against Toronto fair and square, and they also just won their series against the Columbus Blue Jackets fair and square as well. As I said in my last video about this, Tampa Bay and Calgary were stuck with their opponents either way. And at the end of the day, if the team doesn't win their series, they lose, whether it's this current format or the old format. But I'm just saying that for me personally, I think that it's the fairest way to do the playoffs is to have it based on the ranking in the conference, not based on your ranking in your division. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that, for example, second place Nashville is playing, third place San Jose is playing a seventh place team instead of the second place team Nashville. Because the way that what I liked about the old format is that the better teams got to play the weaker opponents. Well, technically, in quotes, quote unquote, weaker opponents. I mean, as Colorado and Columbus have proven, the quote unquote weaker opponent is sometimes the strongest between them and the first place team, because as Calgary and Tampa Bay proved this year in the past month, as of the filming of this video, you know what? Sometimes the first place teams get too comfortable. They have a record tying, if you're like Tampa Bay, you have a record tying season with 62 regular season wins, but you get comfortable and at the end you've clinched a playoff spot for so long you have nothing to play for. And then your team gets rusty and too comfortable. Then they go into the playoffs against a team like Columbus that had to really bust their butts just to make the playoffs, and Columbus just overwhelms them because the other team is so damn rusty. But, you know, at the same time, I do believe that, in theory, the better teams should get to play the lower-seeded opponents. That's why I would prefer the old format. Like, I would prefer to have seen Nashville playing 7th place Las Vegas and San Jose playing 6th place Dallas. Because that way, I think it would be a more fair way to do it rather than having San Jose and Las Vegas in the first round because they're the second and third place teams in their division. I mean, so basically, with this current format, you could have a division that's really bad. Like say the Pacific Division, for example, or hang on. I'll use the Pacific Division as an example. Like, say the Pacific Division is total garbage in 1 year, where Calgary maybe wins their division with, I don't know, like 90 points, while everybody else has got over 100 points out of all the division champions. And then the second place team, San Jose, has only got like 84 points, and the Golden Knights have maybe I'll throw in the Vancouver Canucks as an example. Maybe San Jose's got like 84 points and the Canucks only have 80. And then in the wild card, you've got a team like, I don't know, I'll use Dallas as a random example, where they get into the wild card with more points than the winner of the Pacific Division, the Calgary Flames, and because they're the highest wild card seed, they play the lowest division winner, or the division winner with the least amount of points. So Calgary versus Dallas. Dallas beats Calgary because they have no business being there in my example, of course. This is just an example I made up, eh? And then you have San Jose and the Vancouver Canucks, where if both teams actually made the playoffs and played other opponents, they have no business being in the second round. But because they're both in their division and it's based on division performance, well, one of those teams is going to win and move to the second round. And there's going to be a team in the Central Division or two that gets screwed over where they have to play each other in the first round instead of those two teams getting to play, for example, San Jose and the Vancouver Canucks and knock them both out in the first round, where those teams should be in the second round and not the two teams, in my example, in the Pacific Division, or the winner of those two teams, sorry. So that's something that I do not like about the current format. It's based on how you rank in your division rather than in the conference. Now, I have had people say to me that they do like the idea of a 1 versus 16 format, and honestly, I totally disagree with that. And here's my reasoning for it, and I hope I don't sound bad, but in poor taste or anything. It's just, I disagree with that because I feel that it's best to keep it within the conferences. The traveling would just be too crazy. I don't like the idea of all this time zone changes and stuff, and I think it's better to keep it within the divisions, in the conferences. In the Stanley Cup final, totally fine. Like the Eastern Conference champion versus the Western Conference champion, that works. But for me, I totally disagree with the concept of a 1 versus 16 format because with all the different time changes, you're going to have some teams probably getting very jet lagged from all the traveling. And all that additional traveling and all the additional costs for traveling, I know the NHL can afford to pay the extra traveling, I'm sure, or it costs to fly the players from place to place, but I prefer it within the conferences. That way the time zones are closer together. That way you don't have a team like, say, Calgary having to travel back and forth between Calgary and, say, Florida. And, say a team like Arizona traveling between Arizona and Montreal in the first round. I mean, that's going to take eventually take a toll on the players of both teams, or in all 4 teams in my example. I mean, if you've got it within your conferences where it's Montreal and Florida, for example, they're in the same time zone. That's better. Where you got 2 teams like, say, Calgary, who's in the Mountain Time Zone, and Arizona, who sometimes is in the same time zone because they don't follow daylight savings time, for what I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then they're kind of in the same time zone. And you know what? At least between a Pacific time zone team like, say, Los Angeles or Las Vegas, and a team in the Central time zone like, say, Nashville, there's only a 2-hour difference instead of a 3-hour difference. So, because of the time zones and the travel times, I prefer the current format of conference versus conference. I don't like the idea of a 1 versus 16. So now I'm going to get into what I really wanted to talk about in this video here. And there's something I did. I watched my video last night and I did not remember hearing myself talking about it, and it has to do with how the second round matchups work. What I don't like about the second round is it's still kind of based on your division. Like, for example, in the Central Division, you had Nashville play the wild card team, Dallas, and then you had Winnipeg, of course, playing St. Louis, eh? Dallas won, St. Louis won, because they're both because Dallas is part of the Central Division thanks to the wild card spot that they were in and how it worked out, and of course the 2 middle teams and St. Louis winning between the 2 central middle teams, you've got a Dallas-St. Louis second round match, which St. Louis won last night as of this video. Then in the Pacific, you've got San Jose playing Colorado. Now, as I said in my last video, I mean, under the current situation in the second round in this 2018-19 postseason, it actually worked out just fine because San Jose, out of the 4 Western teams, is the highest seeded team left. And they're playing the lowest seed, Colorado, and the 2 middle teams. So that worked out just fine. Boston and Columbus, let's take a look at that in the East. Let's see here. So Boston, using the old format with the 2 division winners being on top, Boston would be 3rd and Columbus would be 8th. So those 2 teams play. And then the Islanders in 4th, Carolina in 7th. Okay, that works. Now, here's where I want to talk about here, and if I remember correctly, I thought about this last night, but let's say that we actually change things up a little bit, and instead of Carolina winning their series against Washington, what if we change that in this scenario that I'm about to make up here, and say that Washington defeated Carolina instead of Carolina defeating Washington? And by the way, Carolina has just been on an absolute tear in the playoffs, which is incredible. They beat the Stanley Cup champions. They haven't been in the playoffs in over a decade, and now they've gone to the Eastern Conference Final. I mean, to you Hurricanes fans out there, congratulations, by the way. I don't think I've given you enough credit here on my channel talking about the playoffs. So congratulations, guys, and I wish you all the best against the Boston Bruins, because that should be a great series. I can't wait to see that series start, to be honest. All we've got now is just Game 7 between Colorado and San Jose tonight. It'll be interesting to see who wins that, because either team could win. I mean, both teams have been really good in the playoffs, or in this series so far, at least in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see who pulls it all off and wins it in Game 7 tonight. The only thing that sucks about me going to work in the next hour from now as I'm filming this is that I'm not going to be able to see the game. That's a bummer. But anyways, if Washington moved on instead of Carolina, because it's a playoff format based on the divisions, it would have been the Islanders and Washington in the second round. Well, Columbus moved on, and they're the 8th place team in the East. So, let's take a look at the overall standings. So, Washington would have been a 2nd place team overall playing a 4th place team, while the 3rd place team would be playing the 8th place team. I mean, folks, let me ask you this. Do you feel that it's right that the 2nd place team in the Eastern Conference is playing the 4th place team in the conference instead of the lowest ranked team in the entire conference that made the playoffs, the 8th place Columbus Blue Jackets? Do you think it's fair that the 3rd place Bruins get the 8th place Blue Jackets instead of the 2nd place Capitals, who get stuck with the 4th place Islanders? I don't know about you folks, but I don't think that's right. So that's an issue that I want to talk about here in this part 2. This is why I've decided, okay, well, before I go to work today, I'm going to sit down and do this part 2 video and give you guys something extra. Because in my opinion, when I thought about it last night, I felt that it exposed another major flaw in the current format. And I find that this current format is very flawed, in my opinion. You may not agree with me, and if you don't, I understand. I mean, it still works. At the end of the day, the best team is going to win the cup. But on the other side of the coin, what bothers me is that a team that would win in a system based on ranking, conference ranking, may get stuck with a tougher opponent and might lose. Which I know it's their loss. It's too bad, so sad. I mean, just look at Calgary and Tampa. Their demise, those two teams' individual demises would have happened anyway. And you know what? Ironically, with the current format, the way the playoffs have been so sporadic and out of control and just downright random and crazy, I mean, ironically, the format's worked out. Where, the highest seed is playing the lowest seed. But it wouldn't work like that if, say, Washington beat Carolina. It wouldn't work. I mean, imagine if instead of Columbus winning their series, which I still can't believe they swept Tampa Bay. I mean, that's just bloody insane. But say Tampa Bay won their series against Columbus. So you're telling me that the 1st place team in the Eastern Conference is playing the 3rd place team instead of the 7th place team, where Carolina would still be playing the Islanders, but Tampa Bay would have to play Boston? I'm sorry, folks, but I don't agree with that. It should be based on how you finish in the conference. If you're the highest seeded team, as it was before, you play the lowest seeded team that's still in contention. So if you're Tampa Bay, or in this case, or in my scenario, Washington, and you move on to the second round, whoever's the highest seeded in the conference plays the lowest seeded in the conference. And the two middle teams would meet each other in the second round. That to me is fair. This current format to me is not. And once I thought about this flaw in the system, I mean, even though I am okay with the current format, I am okay with it because at the end of the day, the champion's going to be the champion, eh? But ever since I thought about this flaw last night, I'm even more convinced that this format has got to go. It's just not fair, in my opinion. I don't feel it's fair. I mean, the current playoff format gets the job done, and it does, but I don't like it. And you know what? The fact that if, say, Tampa Bay moved to the second round and they're stuck with third place Boston instead of seventh place Carolina, I'm sorry, that's not fair. So the fourth place team, the New York Islanders, get to play the lowest seeded team that's still left. Sorry, I don't agree. If Washington moved on instead of Carolina, and in this case Columbus still moves on, so instead of saying that Tampa Bay moved on in my scenario, picture Washington moving on instead of Carolina. So you're telling me that the second place team overall in the conference has to play the fourth place team instead of the eighth place team? I mean, I know it's up to you, and it's got to be what you think, because I'm sharing my opinion here. But hang on a second. Hang on. Do you really think it's fair that a higher seeded team should be stuck with a middle ranked team rather than the lowest ranked team that's still left in the conference? Sorry guys, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair that if Washington moved on, that they would have to play the fourth place Islanders instead of the the eighth place Blue Jackets. I mean, you're supposed to, in my opinion, get some type of advantage for finishing at the top. If you finish at the top, in my opinion, you deserve to play the lower ranked opponents. Not this current format where, oh, well, because I moved on in a divisional round, I get to play the other team that's left in our division battles. Sorry, I don't agree with it. And you know what? As of right now, I do not blame the NHL for wanting to keep things the same until they get Seattle established. I respect that. But once Seattle gets their team going, which I do hear they're going to be called the Sockeyes, and personally I'm not a fan of the name. Once they get this Seattle team going, what are you waiting for? Get the playoff format changed. And don't do this random bye thing where teams get a bye. Sorry, all it's going to do is make the top teams get rusty. No, you make everybody play. The old format was perfectly fine the way it was. In fact, I think the old format would be even better having only the top two seeds in each conference being division winners. Because that way, it gives an extra team that doesn't win the division a chance to have home ice advantage. I'm for that. I think that's fair. Instead of just having, each division winner from 3 different divisions being at the top of the conference, which that's even in the past had some flaws too, because you have a team from a crappy division that's just done piss poor all season long, and you know they get in and they get home ice advantage. That's not right. But now that we have 4 divisions instead of 6, I mean the division winner in each division getting the top 2 seeds in each conference, that works. That to me is totally fine. That works. I mean, you could have a flaw where a division winner shouldn't be second overall. Yes, you're right. I understand that, but at the same time, you know what? How often is that really going to happen? And even if it does, well, if they lose in the first round, well, sucks to be you. Too bad. You lost fair and square, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, anyways, I just really wanted to get that off my chest, because once I thought of that flaw in the second round formatting as well, that really cemented my opinion that this current playoff format has got to go. I mean, it gets the job done. But just because it gets the job done and determines the Stanley Cup champion doesn't mean that it's right. And I certainly do not feel it's right. I hope that as soon as they get the Seattle team established, redo the playoff format and go back to the way it was before. Because I think it is a hell of a lot more fair. The fairest way I think it is to decide it is to have it based on how a team finishes overall in the conference, rather than how they do in their division. And if you don't agree with me, or if you feel that other formats like 1 versus 16 is the best way to do it, I respect your opinion. But I will be honest, I respectfully disagree. Now, finally, before I wrap up this video, I do have a little bit of channel housekeeping to do. First off, I have not forgotten about the international hockey video to you, Marcus, and to you, Sean, if you're watching this, which I'm sure you are. I haven't had the time to do it lately. I'm going to do my best to try and sit down and get that video done. And with the timing of the World Hockey Championship starting this week, I think in the next few days would be a damn good time to sit down and get a video made for you. Another thing, the Canadian Football League is unveiling their brand new uniforms from the company New Era, who's taken over their uniform contract from Adidas. They're unveiling their uniforms, I believe, next week. So, Sean, I will be talking about the Alouettes in that segment. So I'm going to tie the new uniform league-wide rollout of the New Era uniforms to with the Montreal Alouettes new uniforms, because there's also, believe it or not, the BC Lions are getting new uniforms as well, which I thought only the Alouettes were getting new uniforms. But I'm excited that BC has decided to make a tweak. Plus, Toronto's actually changing their uniforms a little bit and going with light blue numbers, which I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be a fan of that, but hopefully I will be. And also, I believe the Ottawa Red Blacks might be making a tweak or two as well. But we'll find out once the entire league rollout is completed, I believe on May 15th, which is a week from today as I'm filming this. So, anyways, you guys, I will call it a wrap on this video now, and also a quick other mini note as well. I will be doing a Facebook channel update video in the next week or two. That is coming as well. I just thought I'd mention that as well. Anyways, with that, take care, and of course, as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and as usual, bye for now.